So the next thing you have to do after we have those diagrams, and by the way, you should have those diagrams, period. That's the beautiful thing about this is your development team should have UML diagrams or something that defines the boundaries already. And the only thing maybe you have to add is some minor documentation here and there. So that first step should largely already be done, just as part of the standard development and operation lifecycle. But this next one, identifying the technical scope, this is identifying the levels at which this threat model will be operating. So we have to ask ourselves, what is it we've already done? How have we already looked at this system? What's changed since the last time we did a threat model? And is there something maybe specific that we should look at? Is there some kind of inter-system or intra-system activity that's important that's been ignored as far as the threat modeling is concerned in the past, or that was touched on but we want to go in more depth because maybe it's something that's, again, critical or important? Maybe we pull our user data, so usernames and things like that, contact data, from another system, and we want to explore how our system could be impacted if there were a problem with that, if the data were bad, if the system were down, or a whole host of other things. So maybe that's what we focus on, or maybe not. When we've done, as part of identifying that technical scope, we're really going through and we're asking ourselves, okay, what diagrams that we already have should we be using? What diagrams that we already have can we look at that will help us make the best use of our time and help us do this quickly? The other thing is you obviously have to look at those same diagrams and understand who owns this data, who owns this system, where are the demarcation points between that ownership, who controls the system and the data, and that can be different, where the demarcation points for that happen to be, and then of course any overlaps. And absolutely, positively, critically, you have to know who the stakeholders are. And those stakeholders need to be involved in this process. And to your point, Raniel, those stakeholders should include security, but they should also include the product owner, the data owner, the program or project manager. They should include key users. So you should have a few different perspectives, because each one of these perspectives is going to be absolutely important to a successful threat modeling exercise where you learn a lot about the system. A few quick tips. When we do threat modeling, oftentimes people go down rabbit holes. The first few times, again, I cannot say this enough, make your scope broad. There are a few reasons for this. If I make my scope broad, I can dial it in later. I can zoom in later. But I know that I've at least looked at the general overall threats that can affect my system. If all I do is from the get-go, the very first threat modeling for this system, I say my authentication, my authorization is the absolute most important component. And so I laser in on those components. You can have the world's best authentication and authorization mechanisms, but you can still leak like a sieve. You can still get horribly compromised. If instead we looked at the system in its entirety, did a very broad look first, I can at least mitigate a number of those big threats that would affect my critical systems, but I'd also look at and mitigate, etc., the other threats, the other big threats in the other components. So definitely, when you do this to begin with, start broad, and then we'll zoom in later on. And then we can zoom back out later on.
So, for people that may not know this, is threat modeling only for AppSec, or can it be for system administration or like system security, all these different like things. Can it be for system networks, all that? Can they do threat modeling on their stuff, or is it just only for application security?
So that's one of the beautiful things. Keep in mind, we keep using the term system, and the reason why we're using the term system is because it really is everything. System is a network view. System is a system view. So you have this, rather than just look at the network, we're looking at the servers too. Or maybe we're only looking at the servers and we're ignoring the general network overlay. You know, we've focused in instead on how these servers interact, how the user interacts, but I'm not focused on the various ways that this is laid out. So if we have different subnets and things of that nature, I'm not so bogged down with the details of the network. And system can also be applications. To your question, threat modeling is, again, something that can be done at all layers and all levels. So your network folks should be doing threat modeling. Your system folks should be doing threat modeling. Your application folks should be doing threat modeling.
That's a good thing, because I noticed that it only seems like application security does that. It doesn't seem like the network teams or system administrator or system engineers do any threat modeling, even from their whole system or the infrastructure of code or any of that. They don't do any of that. They do, however, the only thing that they do, which is not threat modeling, they will do what developers may do as a review. So they'll push something in their code, they'll have a review, they'll get their system set up and have people review it, but they don't actually have a threat model with a team to say, hey, this is vulnerable.
Yeah.
We didn't have a chance to do that even when I worked for IBM, to actually look at these systems before they were actually pushed in for production. So that's a good thing. I just wanted to bring that out for people that did not know. It's not only for application security. You do threat modeling on anything.
Yes, definitely.
Maybe you want to threat model your life as well.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, but back to you.
So another important thing is that, again, you remain high level, and that's even when you're laser focused. So even if I have zoomed in to, for example, just the authentication mechanism, I still want to stay high level. And what I really mean by that is you need to avoid going down rabbit holes and zooming in within the subject, within whatever it is you're looking at. So if I say I'm going to look at my authentication, then by golly, I'm going to look at my authentication, and I'm not going to go through and start delving into, oh, well, how exactly does this very specific thing work? When you do that, you're going to slow down your threat modeling. If I'm looking at authentication, let's look at our general authentication system. Let's not sit there and start saying, okay, well, but we're using SAML, and SAML allows this, and this, and what can attackers do if they use this oddity that we're not even using? Well, we're not examining the SAML protocol in extreme detail and depth. We are examining our authentication. See, so that's, if I want to do SAML, I'm going to do SAML. But if I'm doing authentication, then it needs to be what's present, not what could be present, what is present, or what we know we have plans to have present. So we have to avoid just going further and further and further down this rabbit hole and finding ourselves lost. That's one of the biggest time sinks you'll find. And you'll find that a developer or administrator or a security person who just wants to take you down a ride, and you as a team have to commit that this is the thing we're going to discuss and this is how it's going to be. We will ignore asking silly questions and ridiculous scope, things that are very stupid, and we will avoid going down rabbit holes.